Alrighty, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. I am your host, Caleb Burzak. Follow me on all my socials at, you guessed it, Caleb Burzak. All my socials, just follow me on Twitter. I'm not really active literally anywhere else. I could not, I'm 27 years old. I ain't posting on Snapchat. I'm an introvert that doesn't care if anyone sees my life, so I don't post on Instagram either. It's all Twitter all the time. And you know what? I kind of post sparingly on there too. I probably got to get better at that. I won't. I simply won't. It's just, it is what it is at this point. But, today, got the undershirt on, got a hat on because I was in produce all day and I have hat hair from wearing a different hat. So here we are. Thought I was going to be, laid up in my bed like, Uncle Frank or Grandpa Jim, whatever the hell his name was from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or Willy Wonka, you get it, right before his grandson, hit the jackpot, maybe taking over a giant stack of money. All of a sudden his legs are working perfectly. Shout out to Jim Rome on that one. But yeah, instead I'm here because house guests are out and about, which is great, Love seeing people I haven't seen in quite some time, but you know what? I also love solitude. I'll tell you that right now. I love solitude, but that is beside the point. We are back in the closet of shame here, folks, ladies and gentlemen. We are here, and it is the start of division preview season. I have had the foresight to move it up a little earlier than it was last year, so I'm not just absolutely crunching 2 episodes a week on division previews alone. Just to get that out to you for the end of the season. No. I went back. I did the math. We're like 9 weeks or so out from the beginning of the NFL season, of the college season. I kind of timed this so that we get right up to the edge there, get to the last division preview, and then all of a sudden you look up, college football week 1's going on. Week 0 will be going on when I'm doing the last division preview, I want to say. And then what do you got there? Oh, you got NFL week 1 right after that, and we're just right into the swing of fall from there. So, hey, we're starting off with the division previews today. I got a couple headlines before we get into that, though. So, without further, bloviating at the top of this show, let's just get straight into it. I'm done talking in circles. Let's go. And things just keep popping up on my screen and making noise. I would prefer you go away, Adobe. I'm not, no free ads, so fuck off. Don't need you around here. Also, Foster Moreau announced he's in full remission. Good for him. Get the hell out of here, cancer. There you go. Whatever. We're going to get into the actual headlines of this show, though. So, what do we got first off? First off, we have got, one NFL headline here. First and foremost, Isaiah Rodgers, you may remember, all but admitted that he had gambled while in the facility on the games. It came out that in addition to what's coming down here, which by the way buried the lead, indefinite suspension, which means at least a full year for Isaiah Rodgers and defensive end Rashad Berry, who I definitely heard of before this headline came up. Don't you question my knowledge of Rashad Berry. I am an encyclopedia of Rashad Berry knowledge, I'll have you know. But both of those guys suspended indefinitely for gambling on NFL games. Isaiah Rodgers in particular put a $1,000 prop on running backs over-under. Information still yet to come out on whether he bet the under or the over. Kind of changes the tenor a little bit. Doesn't change the general meat of the actions, though. Big time idiot test failed. You're out of here. Probably not coming back in the NFL again because they're not like, not like a Calvin Ridley, if you will. Jameson Williams is a little bit different because he just kind of gambled on different sports while he was in the locker room. But either way, same sort of thing. Unless you are a high-end sort of talent that has great impact on the overall direction of the team, simply not going to work out for you. And from what I understand, Isaiah Rodgers kind of a safety hybrid role. Safeties are the running backs of the defense. We'll just call it what it is. He was not going to stick around, unfortunately, after this. And hey, maybe someone picks him up after the suspension is done. I don't know, man. I feel like the teams are kind of sending a clear message that if you bet on games, you're not coming back. It's a bridge you can't cross. The NFL keeps absolutely lopping people's hands off to make that point. And by the way, sounds like I'm criticizing it there with that bit of over-exaggeration, but this is what you got to do in an era of gambling on sports teams. Mine just went really blank right there. Sorry, I just worked for 9 hours today, so forgive me if my brain's a little bit hazy at times. But in an era where sports books are legal, more and more states are legalizing, and NFL being the most popular sport in America, that's only going to grow. It's a huge market. It's a giant moneymaker for these sports books. And if you're gonna keep everyone's hands clean, if with all that being legal in regular sort of circulation around you, you got to send messages when the players do it. If you go soft from these sorts of things, hey, even if it was anything less than a full season for gambling on NFL games, it would not be enough, quite frankly. And having a season plus, that's really what you got to go for there. I understand it wholeheartedly. This is what you actually have to do if you want to keep the players' hands out of the pot. Otherwise, if you don't make it a possibly career-threatening move, you're going to get all sorts of guys doing it. So, I mean, sometimes you've just got to come down with the force of God on people's heads to let them know that, hey, there are some lines that you simply cannot cross. So, yeah, Isaiah Rodgers and Rashad Berry suspended indefinitely for gambling on games, and basically right after that decision came down, Chris Ballard called them up, said, get the hell out of here, and they got cut. Both of them are cut. Both of them are out of a job looking for a new one. There will be many casualties to the idiot test before this gets better, but this is what you got to do. Also, addendum to that, little bit more forgivable. Titans starting offensive lineman Nicholas Petit-Frere, a little French boy over there, gets 6 games for gambling on other sports from the team facility. I don't know if it was like the actual facility or in a hotel on the road. Either way, can't do it. But to be fair, I did not know that was even a rule until we started getting suspensions for that. Like Jamison Williams got handed down earlier in the offseason here. Like I had no idea, and I assume this is all stemming from violations throughout the course of the last season. And I'm not sure like over half of the players, if not like a majority of players, knew about this. I have no idea. I had no idea about it. I assume they got some sort of cursory talk about it, but it's kind of forgivable. This is less of an idiot test. Still kind of you're towing the line there, but it's less of an idiot test, more of like, okay, you didn't know. We'll give you this slap on the wrist this next time, this first time, which, 6 games, still, it's a heavy slap on the wrist. That's leaving a mark for a couple days that you're going to have to explain to the people at school of why you're coming in with bruises, for sure. But, it's just a first-time offense. You can come back from that. You still got 11 games here in the 17-game schedule that you can come back and still play in. And you know what? I don't necessarily understand that aspect of the rule, but it is what it is. You got to keep it as much as at an arm's length as you possibly can, and I understand that. I understand that wholeheartedly. But yeah, just don't fail the idiot test, guys. I'm not sure there's literally one single NFL player listening to this, but if they are, there's one piece of wisdom I can impart on you. It's just don't fail the idiot test. That's really all you can do. That's maybe not all you can do. It's a very easy way to avoid a career-ending pothole for you. I'll tell you that much. So just don't fail the idiot test. Don't gamble in the team facility. Don't gamble on NFL games. It's just, especially not your own team. That's maybe the dumbest thing I've heard thus far in this whole like spate of gambling suspensions. Isaiah Rodgers, that is the idiot test of all. You got an F minus on the idiot test, gambling on your own team on a player prop at that. Which, by the way, I cannot stress this enough. I would love to know whether it was an over or under. An under strikes a much harsher tone than what if you're betting the over, you're saying I got some faith in this guy. This is unnamed Indianapolis Colts running back who I can only assume is Jonathan Taylor, from what I understand. So if he bet the over, that's just supporting your team. If he bet the under, oh man, he ain't. I mean, he's probably not getting a job again anyways, but he definitely wouldn't be getting a job again in the NFL if he ended up doing that, betting the under on a teammate. That's difficult territory there, but let's move on to some NBA headlines before we just dive straight nose first back into the NFL, shall we? So first off, James Harden opted into his contract with the 76ers, but it was for the purposes of seeking a trade. And I think he's specifically asked to go to the Clippers, which, James Harden on the open market can probably make more. Well, I've been told he can probably make more. It boggles my mind to think that he would be making over $40 million a year for what he inevitably does every single time he gets in the playoffs. But I guess I don't really know basketball, so I'll just leave that there for now. But at like 35 million, I think it is. I think that's what his number is right now for next season. It's a fairly tradable contract, especially for what James Harden brings you. And a team like the Clippers, where they already got Kawhi Leonard, if old Glass Bones and Paper Skin can stay healthy in the lineup all through the playoffs, which that's an if that we simply have not seen since 2019. So I'm not holding my breath, but some out there may be inclined to hold their breath. Don't pass out, because you will. You will if you're waiting on old Kawhi Leonard to play in the playoffs, which, hey, I might eat my words this very next season. But with him, with Paul George in there, really all you need James Harden to do in that specific situation is to come in and just basically run point guard. He's a very good distributor of the ball. I think he led the NBA in assists last year, so he can still contribute a lot in that role. He's not a guy that you want jacking up 20 shots a game in the postseason, as he showed multiple times just this year alone. I mean, a couple times it worked out, but many more, it worked out to the tune of like 7 for 20 or something like that, or like a 3 for 14. That's something we saw all sorts of times. You can mitigate that a lot if you just use his passing ability without necessarily relying on him to be a scorer come the postseason time. So would be a good place to go. I'll put it to you this way. I think James Harden to the Los Angeles Clippers makes the Clippers level up a little bit more in their team building than I think the Bradley Beal acquisition levels up what the Suns are, quite frankly. I think James Harden with the Clippers would actually be a significant improvement to the team when him, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George are out there on the court. But who's to say? It's one of those situations like we're going to talk about here in just a second with a different player where, sure, you got a specific destination in mind, but if you're not getting a package back in return that is attractive per se, maybe the Clippers aren't the one. Maybe they go with somebody else. Maybe someone else is a little bit more eager to trade for James Harden, willing to give up a little bit more of the pot to get James Harden than a Los Angeles Clippers might be. Who's to say? I don't know. That's one of the more interesting things that happened in free agency, and it wasn't even really a free agent thing. It was just possible trade, which that's a theme in all of free agency, by the way. Don't need to burst anybody's bubble. I mean, hey, congrats to Fred VanVleet getting absolutely paid down in Houston to the tune of like $42 million a year, something like that. Who else? We got, shout out to Dylan Brooks getting paid $80 million over 4 years, sign and trade with the Memphis Grizzlies to Houston, or to Houston via the Memphis Grizzlies. You get it. All that sort of stuff. Who else? Eric Gordon signing with the Suns. Big time. Why not just add another shooter? You need a ball handler, but there's not really one on the market. Just add a shooter. Why not? Bruce Brown, I think, going to the Indiana Pacers. Outside of that, also the, Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, they're gone. They're in the win. I think Caleb Martin went up to Toronto. These, by the way, if you've never heard of Caleb Martin or Gabe Vincent, understandable. The bench players from the Heat's most recent championship run. Maybe bench players, starters. They were guys that were undrafted that were being touted very highly. That's the best way to put it right there. They're both gone. They're out of there. Gabe Vincent went to the Lakers. Caleb Martin, I think, went up to Toronto, up there in Canada. So that's where he'll be spending the next 2 years or so. But there goes the entire Heat bench outside of Tyler Hero, which I think Tyler Hero was actually a starter, so really thinning out there on the bench, and now you got even less things to trade for the guy we're going to talk about here in just a second, but almost bury the lead there. But outside of them, just kind of a synopsis on free agency. There was some big money changing hands, don't get me wrong, but no one really changed teams. Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Edwards, I think LaMelo Ball signed. Oh, yeah, Miles Bridges, after all those, domestic abuse and gun charges, he got a qualifying offer from the Charlotte Hornets. That, a cool like $7 million a year for this guy, which $7 million a year sounds like a lot, but I think you're just an NFL brain if you're thinking that, because you got to look at the numbers that some of these guys are getting. I mean, Dylan Brooks, for God's sake, got $20 million a year on his deal with the Memphis Grizzlies, sending that down there to the Houston Rockets to get a trade exemption. I don't know. That salary cap stuff. It's even more confusing in the NBA than it is in the NFL, quite frankly. But that's all to say, a lot of the players changing teams were a lot of role players. If they were big time players, like, hey, Chris Middleton, he stayed home. Brook Lopez, that was a big piece for the Milwaukee Bucks to re-sign. They re-signed him. They bring in Robin Lopez. So I mean, the universe is back in beautiful synchronicity, where you got those two lumbering behemoths that love Disney World on the same team at the same time. Once again, the Lopez brothers are back together, and you can only tell which one is which because one has some crazy fucking hair. That's the best way I can describe it. You can figure out which one has the crazy hair. I believe in you to go do that, but not much else going on. People signed big money, but it was all on extensions outside of that. Yeah. Role players, changing teams. Y'all don't really care. So let's move on to the big name of the weekend. Damian Lillard of the Portland Trail Blazers, one of the best guards in the entire league, has officially requested a trade from the Portland Trail Blazers, with the preferred destination being the Miami Heat. And I will tell you right now, just based on the tone that the not Tampa Bay, Trail Blazers, my goodness, I got the TB right, but my brain totally went to the wrong end of the country on that one. The Portland Trail Blazers, the GM over there, struck a tone where I'm not sure Miami is going to have the juice to compete in this market, quite frankly, because it seems like the GM is just saying, sure, you want to go to Miami. Sure, people are saying that you got to do right by Dame in order to look good to future free agents, but every once in a while, it's usually a funny show, but every so often you get a nice little kernel of truth in there. On pardon my take, I was just listening to that, and they said no one's really going to Portland in the first place, and I thought to myself, you know what? That's true. At free agency, they're either getting trades there or they're just drafting people and bringing them up through the system. They don't really bring a whole lot of guys in unless they're kind of lower mid-level guys. They're not bringing stars to town is what I'm trying to say here. So is the reputation really going to get that much worse if they kind of just sell off Dame Lillard to the highest bidder? I think if you're just talking from like, hey, do the right thing standpoint, yeah, there's a real argument to be made that you should accommodate Dame's specific destination in his trade request. But I'm not sure their reputation's going to get a whole lot worse if they just say, I don't know, if the Houston Rockets, they seem pretty motivated this offseason, if the Houston Rockets just come in there and throw the kitchen sink at them, I would be, especially since the Houston Rockets are still probably going to stink. They tanked all the way to not getting any of the best players in this draft. I mean, it was basically a three-man draft at the top. I think they got pick number 4 or 5. So you lose that game. Cupboard's kind of bare. It looks like you're probably not going to be very good next season because you signed a banger of a fascinating core with Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, and Amen Thompson, or whatever his brother's name is. They're both Thompsons. I don't know. Overtime elite, baby. Build your brand. Yeah, maybe if someone like that comes out, the Portland Trail Blazers will sell Dame to that highest bidder. I would still love to see him on the Miami Heat because for different reasons, the Miami Heat haven't exactly been a destination for stars in free agency either since LeBron went there. So I would love to see that. I would love to see them make that trade because if they get Damian Lillard, you pair him with Jimmy Butler, where, I mean, you got two of the best closers in the entire game. Dame Lillard can take on the really alpha number one scoring role throughout most of the game. Then y'all can just kind of two-man game it to death in the final stretch of the game. And then outside of that, you got Bam Adebayo, who's a perfect third player on a championship caliber team. That is legitimately, even with losing those guys, having less of a deep bench, one of the best teams in all of the Eastern Conference, all of the NBA for that matter, if they somehow pull this off and get Dame Lillard. But again, it all comes down to compensation. It's maybe it's all just like public posturing, but the Trailblazers organization seems to be playing a hard line on this one. So I hope he goes to Miami. It's far from a guarantee, though, which is probably why they came out and said it. I feel like he's going to go to Miami. Let's just put those vibes out in the universe, man. Would love to see it. I think he'd love Miami. I think he has the type of how do I put it? The type of mentality to thrive in Miami. I don't think every star necessarily has the requisite mentality to thrive there because they are the Patriots of the NBA. But I also feel like he would enjoy the no state income tax. I'm going to put it to you that way. Outside of that, though, good on him. Good deal. That's it for the headline. So let's get into our first division preview, shall we? Today we have got the AFC East. Let's pop it over. Pop it over. What the hell am I even talking about, man? But that's right, AFC East. I got at least part of that right before I took a hit of that smooth Coca-Cola right there. That sounds like I'm doing drugs. No. I'm just giving a free ad to someone that doesn't sponsor the podcast. I mean, no one has yet, so fuck it. Might as well just say the product name, I suppose. But I digress. AFC East today, boys and girls, and we have got, nice little chunk of time here to get it done without going absolutely overboard. So let's pop right into this bad boy. Last year, the division standings were the Buffalo Bills, followed by the Miami Dolphins, followed by, I believe, the New England Patriots. Yeah, they were better than the Jets, who were dead last in the division last year. And I would say things have changed. Things have changed fairly substantially in the division throughout the course of the offseason. So, without further ado, let's just get right to my preview of what they're looking like in 2023. Let's stop talking about 2022. Let's just get right into the action of what's going on. First off, starting off with the division winners, just going right down the standings to tell you what's going on with all that. The Bills, they won the division last season, lost key pieces on the defense, including Tremaine Edmonds, defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier. Still got Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. They added Damian Harris to the offense, and a host of deep threats in free agency where, you pay them a little bit of money and maybe they make a big play for you at some point during the season. That's the type of calculation that the Bills are making this season, man. Just toss it deep, literally every play, and eventually something good's going to happen because you've got one of the strongest arms in the NFL and an absolute wild man at quarterback in Josh Allen. So I can't fault him for the strategy. Fucking underneath path. We're going 30 yards down the field on a per attempt basis. We're going to have 20 to 30 yards per attempt every single game, and it's going to be glorious. It's going to be absolutely glorious, I say. But yeah, hard to see them missing the playoffs bar an injury. They still have a very good defense. Even with losing those pieces they did, they kept the core of the secondary intact. If they stay healthy this year, that secondary can more than make up for what they lost in the middle of the defense. And they didn't really lose anything on the defensive line either. I think they still got Greg Rousseau in action there. Still got Von Miller coming off that ACL, but if he comes back looking healthy like he did before the ACL, watch out because they're still going to make some noise over there. But yeah, let's look at what they did this offseason overall when it comes to the draft and free agency, shall we? If I can pull it up on my photos real quick. All right. As far as free agents are concerned, obviously lost Tremaine Edmonds. Bring in Connor McGovern, though, on the offensive line there. That's one I forgot to mention, but that's a big piece. Steal him from the Cowboys, I believe. I just assume every McGovern's coming from the Cowboys, which, by the way, it's on my screen here. I should know. He's coming from Dallas to Buffalo, playing center over there, I believe. That's a great addition in the center of that offense. Really something they needed. They were very bad at running inside the tackles last year. Don't quote me on that from the analytics. I just did not see them getting a whole lot of success with anyone not named Josh Allen in the center of that offense. So adding Damian Harris, adding Connor McGovern in the center of that unit makes a lot of sense there. Bring back Jordan Poyer. Obviously, we're talking about deep threats here. Deontay Hardy. We got Devin Edwards, I believe. Trent Sherfield. Greg Van Roten. He's not even on the team anymore. He went to Las Vegas, but you get it. Bring back all sorts of players. Oh, they bring in Latavius Murray, by the way, who I'm not sure is going to make the roster. But they brought him in on like a $1.3 million deal. Could be worse there. Could be worse. So yeah, I mean, not a bad group of players. They retain Jordan Phillips. Bring in Leonard Floyd, by the way, from the Los Angeles Rams. That's a big one. Also bring in Case Keenum on a 2-year deal to play the backup. Not a bad. Actually, no. Houston brought in Case Keenum. He went back to Houston. So that's don't quote me on that. But they did bring in Poona Ford too on the defense. Solid defensive lineman there coming over from Seattle before that, and they signed Taylor Rapp from the Los Angeles Rams. So they kept all of their safeties back there, and they signed Taylor Rapp. Not a bad little secondary they got going forward there for the Buffalo Bills. And with that, let's look at the draft from this past year, shall we? Forgot to add him in till late, so forgive me. They add Dalton Kincaid in the first round. Almost forgot about him. He's going to be a game changer at tight end this year. Dawson Knox was an okay receiving tight end. He's more of an all-around guy. Dalton Kincaid is a pure receiver. You're probably going to line him up in the slot as much, if not more, than you do as an inline sort of tight end, sort of traditional tight end, if you will. He's going to be lining up in the slot a whole lot. He's going to be probably the underneath weapon that Josh Allen relies on the most, I would say, outside of Stephon Diggs. He's incredible. You're going to rely on Stephon Diggs a lot because he's a true number one receiver in the NFL. So outside of him, though, Dalton Kincaid, and generally rookie tight ends haven't really played well in their first years. You can go back and look at it. For some reason, the tight end transition to the league is one of the harder ones to make in year one. It kind of progresses more like an NBA player than what you see from some of the wide receivers, like Jamar Chase getting 1,600 yards in his rookie year. It's not quite like that. There's a bit of a learning curve that goes into it where maybe they're not great in their first year, but they can absolutely explode onto the scene in the second year. I think Jimmy Graham in his second season I think that was his best season of his entire career, actually. Like, he caught a million touchdowns, but in his first year, he didn't really get targeted heavily until the end of the year. This might be something that Dalton Kincaid gets to, but he's a great draft pick in the first round. Osiris Torrance bolstering up the inside of that offensive line. Good pick there. Dorian Williams in the third round. I don't really know the rest of these guys. They drafted a guy from Ole Miss in the seventh round. Nick Brooker, I don't care. Hope he does well, I guess, but whatever. And then Alex Austin from Oregon State. You don't really know who any of those last two guys are, and I've named everyone but Justin Shorter in the fifth round. So there you have it. Drafted a wide receiver named Justin Shorter in the fifth round. Cool. Yeah, that's what they did in the draft, as well as what they did in free agency. So let's talk about how it all comes together in one depth chart pie here. Obviously, you got Josh Allen at quarterback. James Cook is currently slated to start, which I didn't think, but they drafted him last year, so makes a lot of sense. Nyheim Hines is going to stay on the team. He's fourth string right now because of what he does in the kick return game. Latavius Murray, though, watch yourself, bud. You're going to be fighting to stay on this team. I know you signed that contract, but you know as well as I do, you're a veteran in this league. Third string running back, when they already got a guy that they're probably going to keep on the team in Nyheim Hines, it's a tough position to be in. I'll just put it to you that way. Obviously, they got Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir coming in at the third sort of receiver role, and having Shakir at that third receiver role, as well as, having Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs, that tells you just about all you need to know. I mean, they also, like I said, Trent Sherfield, Deontay Hardy, Justin Short, just a bunch of deep threats on that team. They are going to throw the ball deep every single play. I'm assuming that's the way Ken Dorsey likes it. That's certainly the way Josh Allen likes it, because he's a crazy person. He's a madman. No two ways about it. The guy kills people. Maybe not legitimately, but you could see it in his eyes. He's a killer if he needs to be. He will throw it deep every single time if you let him, so good for him. Outside of that, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid at the tight end positions. Good sort of pairing there. Dawson Knox can do a lot of the dirty work, which can allow Dalton Kincaid to shine in the receiving game, where he is probably most polished right now. He's definitely not being drafted to be a blocker, so makes sense for all parties involved. I think that'll definitely make them better this season. And on the offensive line, pretty solid group here. I was wrong. Connor McGovern is a left guard, so bad football fan. I'm not a fan of the Bills, though, so sue me, I suppose. Still got Deion Dawkins there at left tackle. They got Spencer Brown at right tackle, Ryan Bates at right guard, Mitch Morse as the center in there, and I want to say that's like outside of McGovern, like the same sort of group they had last year. It's deeper than they've had in previous years. Definitely a much bolstered interior offensive line. So offense overall, I would not expect much of, or if any of a drop off, because one, they have a top 5 quarterback in the league in Josh Allen, pretty much undisputed on that one there. Two, I don't know what the backfield is going to be, but it's deep if nothing else. They can legit go 4 deep if they truly wanted to. Naheem Hines, solid running back there, but, does some good things for you in the kick return game. Solid offensive line, good receivers, all that sort of stuff. I mean, they're a legitimately good football team right now, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. So I don't see them being a whole lot worse than they were last year, even with the strength of the defenses in this division outside of their own team, because every single one of them in this division that they're going to be playing this year got a group of dogs on the defensive side of the ball. We'll get to all of them in just a second, but first, let's get to the Bills defense, shall we? Still got Greg Rousseau over there, still got Von Miller coming back from that ACL injury. Who's to say if he starts the season? But it's a good place. It's a good guy to have around, even if he's not starting. And if he's not starting, I believe they did sign Leonard Floyd, though I'm not sure. Oh yeah, weak side linebacker, Leonard Floyd. He's right there. So if Von Miller's not back immediately, it's okay. You still got a good pass rusher in Leonard Floyd in there, who maybe won't be the same as Von Miller, but will fill in admirably, will take some pressure off Greg Rousseau on the other side, and when Von Miller gets back, he will be an excellent guy on third downs and situations, just having depth. If there's anything that the Eagles have taught us over the last several years, really, it's that you truly cannot have too many pass rushers. It makes everything you do on defense better when the quarterback is running for his life on the opposing side of the field. So having a guy like Leonard Floyd around, he's going to be worth every single penny of that $7 million if he plays up to the expectations there. So very good on the front. Also, A.J. Klein, Matt Milano in the linebacker spot. I believe A.J. Klein is the one stepping up to take Tremaine Edmonds' place. Sorry, forgot his name for a second. He became a Bear and it just expunged from my memory. I hate it so much. I hate his guts now. He's just a terrible person. I don't know, man. Fuck the Bears though. That's for real. Fuck the Bears. But they lose. Easy for me to say. They lose Tremaine Edmonds. So A.J. Klein stepping into that starting middle linebacker role. Maybe it's Matt Milano. I don't really know there, but one of those guys is stepping into the starting lineup. Gonna have to have some shoes to fill there, but like I was alluding to before, when you've got Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Kaiir Elam, who they just drafted, I believe, last year. Dane Jackson behind Kaiir Elam. Teron Johnson behind Tre'Davious White. And you got Taylor Rapp behind Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde as safeties. That is as deep a secondary as you are going to find in the NFL at a top-line level. And so maybe you're going to have some growing pains with those linebackers for the Buffalo Bills here. But by and large, I feel like this is just going to be a solid core, specifically kind of pass rushing to an adequate extent, having that secondary to fall back on to give that pass rush a little bit more time. Maybe you got some things to figure out in the running game, but with that defensive line, Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones in the middle, or Daquan Jones, I apologize. Also having Jordan Phillips and Poona Ford, Tim Settle. I don't know who Tim Settle is, but it would feel weird not to mention him after mentioning literally everyone else in the backups there. Having those guys as depth in the center there, I mean, maybe Ed Oliver is on the smaller side for defensive tackles. More of a pass rusher is why you sign him to that big money there. But having that deep middle there, the defensive line is going to help out the linebackers, and so is the secondary. So their job is going to be a little bit easier, I think, than what it could be if they were just kind of left out there on an island, which makes me think that this Bills defense still is going to be okay. I don't think they're going to be wowing a whole lot of people. Also, by the way, Leslie Frazier goes out of there. Who you got coming in? Play caller now, McDermott. Almost said Doug McDermott. That is definitely not his name. It's Sean McDermott. Doug McDermott is a big, tall, white guy who scored a lot of points in college and is kind of, 3-and-D player in the NBA, but I digress on that front. Sean McDermott is calling the plays there for the Buffalo Bills. Who's to say if that works out or not? I think coordinating and being the head coach calling plays at the same time generally doesn't work out great for situational management as a head coach and performing in that sort of stuff, but I'm open to being proven wrong there, and quite honestly, I think this defense is going to still be very, very good this year. That being said, even with what I just named there, the holes they have on their defense probably make them the worst, base defense in the entire division right now. That's saying a lot. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh, but that's not really, it's not an insult to the Bills. That's just how good this defense is, or this division is on defense right now. So the Bills, still a very high ceiling. They've got a top 5 quarterback and a really solid defense. It's a tough division. I could easily see them coming out on top and vying for a bye with 12 to 13 wins, though. They're just that good. And when you've got a quarterback like Josh Allen with a receiver to throw to like Stephon Diggs, add in a tight end like Dalton Kincaid, hopefully the running game is better with those additions you make in the interior of the offensive line, plus those additions that you make in the backfield. Latavius Murray, by the way, adding a physical presence that they had not had before. Damian Harris, same sort of thing. Big guys that can come in and get you short yardage when you need to. James Cook, for that matter, a bigger guy than what Devin Singletary has been back there in the past doing his thing. So, very good offense, very good defense, very good secondary, like I said. So, and also you top it off with, which no one else has this, I would say, right now in the division, a top 5 quarterback in the entire league. So, Bills are still the leader in the clubhouse, and for my money, still the team that I might pick to win this thing. We'll see what happens when I get through the entire analysis here. But let's look at the floor. Like I said, it's a tough division, maybe the best in all of football, and I'm going to say that a couple times here. The AFC East is absolutely loaded this year, and I think it's going to have less disappointment factor than the AFC West did last year, because I don't think there's going to be the duds that we saw in the AFC West last year in this division. I think every team is going to be, at the very worst, like solid, very, very good, if nothing else. And the floor, like I said, it's a tough division. Maybe the best in all of football, like I said. Hard to see them missing the playoffs unless Josh Allen goes down, but 9 or 10 wins is not out of the question as a floor with a healthy Josh Allen. Even with a healthy Josh Allen, that is. Every team in the AFC East, for my money right now, has a playoff caliber team. That's legitimately how I feel about this whole thing. I feel like this is the best division in all of football. Like I've said 3 or 4 times in the past, 5 minutes at this point. This is a prime time sort of division here, the AFC East. My prediction, 12 wins feels like, or 11 wins feels like the number. That just in a lesser division, no question in my mind they'd be at 12 or 13 wins just based off of the top 5 quarterback in tandem with everything else I just named out there for you. But they will drop a couple just because they have to play every single team in this division twice. Pats, Dolphins, Jets, none of those are going to be a gimme this year, and you got to play them 6 times a year in total for all those. And if you're going to drop some in there, plus just the nature of the NFL, they're going to drop 1 or 2 just because these guys get paid to show up on Sundays as well. So it's an unpredictable sport. It's an oblong ball. It's beautiful. It's violence. We love it. I cannot wait for football to be back. That being said, still might be good enough to win the division, but I don't think a playoff bye is in the cards. 11 wins, 11-6, feels like the number for the Buffalo Bills this upcoming season. But with that, let's go right down the standings here. Let's talk about the Dolphins, shall we? May not have gotten the shine the Jets did this offseason, but they made some splash hirings and additions of their own. They landed Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator. Might be the move that puts them over the top, by the way. We'll talk about the defense here in just a second, but adding Vic Fangio, I would be shocked if they weren't pushing for a top 10 unit next year. They have talent at basically all levels. Having a guy like Vic Fangio in there, who is one of the best defensive play callers that we've got in the game right now, I'd be shocked if they did not finish close to the top 10, quite frankly. I'll put it to you that way, especially with what they've got in place. That might be the move that puts them over the top. Not to mention, they traded for Jalen Ramsey to pair with Xavier Howard. He will be on the field this year, unlike, unfortunately, Byron Jones last year. That's a sad sort of story where his career is probably over because it messed up knee surgery, messed up knees in general. I just hope he has a good quality of life going forward. But that is all to say, you expected him to be on the field last season at some point, and it simply did not happen. But Jalen Ramsey coming in there with Xavier Howard, you've got, at the very worst, 2 of the top 10 corners in the entire league right now. Xavier Howard's right up there. Jalen Ramsey's been right up there for a minute now. And that just makes everything you do easier. Not to mention, they got Javon Holland patrolling the back end. That defense plus Vic Fangio calling it, scary, scary proposition, especially when you consider how explosive they are on the other side of the field. They drafted Devon Achane, my favorite player in the entire draft this year. He dragged the lifeless husk of the Texas A&M Aggies all the way to whatever wins they got last season. Whatever offensive production they had, Devon Achane was behind every last bit of it. I don't care if it was passing. I certainly don't care if it was rushing, because it was Devon Achane every single time. He is electric. He is fast. He's going to pop off the screen whenever he eventually takes over this starting job. He's got track speed, and it translates to the football field very easily. And even in the SEC West, which is probably like it's still a college division, but the most NFL-like college division in all of college football, he was pulling away from guys on a routine and weekly basis. Devon Achane is going to be must-watch television with Mike McDaniel drawing up run schemes for him, and it's the exact type of player that Mike McDaniel loves to have on that team too. Just fast as hell, good vision, and once he hits the hole, that speed just... He could have some big plays this year. As I dropped my phone there, I was just getting excited. Just excited about Devon Achane, man. Not a Dolphins fan, but boy, maybe, and again, I don't want to let my emotions get in the way of this. Maybe pick him up in fantasy. I don't think right away. Initially, I think either Raheem Mostert or Jeff Wilson's going to have that starting job, but Devon Achane is going to take that at some point. Mark my words, he is going to start this coming year. I mean, you can just tell when these things are coming on. This guy, he's going to be electric in the NFL. I'll tell you that right this second. Also drafted just said that. What am I talking about? Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator changes the dynamic of this team, though. You already had the offense with Mike McDaniel, and you had some, lackluster play calling at times on defense, mismanaging who you've got out there, what kind of personnel their strengths are, I suppose. And they were kind of a middle of the road, if not like bottom half of the league sort of defense last year, even with good talent all over the field there. But they added some key players this offseason. They added Vic Fangio, and Vic Fangio is a guy that will get every last bit possible out of this defense. If it's got good talent on it, which it does, Vic Fangio is going to milk every last bit out of that talent. I can guarantee you that. They will be much better this year just by the virtue of adding Vic Fangio, let alone all the guys they actually added on the field than what they were last year. I'm excited to see that sort of defense, and adding that defense to this offense. I mean, if Tua stays healthy, I could very easily see this team getting 11 wins, man. I could also see this team going 9-8 or 8-9 if Tua can't stay healthy, though. White Mike is decent, but without a healthy Tua, this team, it's going nowhere. Bottom line. End of story, period. Let's look at what the team construction is like, though. They brought in free agency David Long out of Tennessee, often injured, but when he's on the field, spectacular linebacker, and they got him for a pretty good price because of that injury concern as well. He absolutely shined whenever he was out there with Tennessee over the last couple years, though. That could be a very good one. It's an addition that the smart people, the people that study numbers religiously, that do this sorts of thing all day, they really love the David Long signing, and I think he's just it doesn't take a whole lot of numbers looking to even know why they're excited. You just look at the raw numbers of tackles and productions based on the games that he played. He's a monster when he's out there. If they can keep him healthy down there in Miami, watch out, because they just had a very good player in the middle. White Mike, like I just talked about, being the backup quarterback. Solid backup to have behind Tua Tagovailoa, especially with the health concerns there. You want a guy that's proven to at least be serviceable back there, and that's really all you need to be when you got the fastest wide receiver core in the entire NFL out there. Signed Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert to 2-year extensions, which drafting Devon Achane feels like there's going to be an odd man out. Probably going to be Myles Gaskin if he hasn't already become the odd man out, but it feels like they're not bringing all of those guys. I mean, well, they're probably going to have, well, they're definitely going to have Devon Achane in there. Probably going to have Jeff Wilson. Probably going to have Raheem Mostert. You're not taking any more than that, though. I mean, maybe you go 3 deep. I don't know, man. It feels like they could also just go 2 deep and cut one of those guys as well. So, I mean, watch out for that. They lose Mike Gesicki to free agency. They bring in White Braxton back to Miami. The return to where he went to college. Braxton Berrios coming down there to return kicks. Outside of that, you got Andrew Van Ginkel coming back for another year in the Miami area. Add Isaiah Wynn for some, much needed depth on the offensive line at tackle there. And outside of that, I mean, they lose Trent Sherfield in free agency. And then there's a bunch of guys that I simply don't know for them. Oh yeah, they added Chosen Anderson, who's still Robbie on the website here for Spotrac. I mean, man, Spotrac is just out here discriminating. That is the word I was looking for. My brain is simply not working here, but I digress. Discriminating against Robbie Anderson, or I'm sorry, Chosen Anderson's chosen name. They're terrible people, man. Cancel Spotrac. Stop doing business with them. I'm just going to keep taking screenshots whenever I need info from their site and then tell no one about it, okay? But there's their free agency. Also, I forgot to mention Landon Roberts. They lost in free agency. He went to Pittsburgh on a 2-year deal for just a little bit less than what Mike White was making there. So that's a big loss. Really the biggest question mark is going to be in the middle of that defense. We'll talk about that in just a second as far as the specific personnel is concerned. As far as the draft, didn't have a whole lot of draft capital because they did trade for Jalen Ramsey. That took up a whole lot of what they were going to put in there. But no first-round pick, second-round pick. They have Cam Smith, add another cornerback to that. Just talked about in the 3rd round, adding Devon Achane. Probably the most impactful pick in this entire draft if I had to guess. I love that pick. I made no bones about that. I absolutely love Devon Achane in that offense. I'm not gonna wax philosophically about that again though. 6th and 7th round, who cares? Doesn't matter. Probably not going to hear a lot about those guys anyways, unless they're running backs, which they're not. So with that, let's look at the roster proper here. The depth chart. Obviously, 2 is the starting quarterback. Right now, Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson are the top 2 on ESPN as far as the depth chart is concerned. Again, watch for that to change. Devon Achane will not be the 3rd string running back the entire year. At some point, he is going to get in the lineup, and he is going to make it so they truly cannot let him out of the lineup. So watch out for that. He's going to be an explosive player. And, of course, do I even need to say the wide receivers at this point? They got Tyreek Hill. They got Jalen Waddle. They have Cedric Wilson now stepping up to that 3rd receiver role. They got White Braxton out there. They got Chosen Anderson. My goodness. I mean, very good wide receiver core. Don't need to say much about that. Much like their backfield, truly just one of the fastest, if not the fastest, wide receiver group of all time. They got one of the fastest backfields that we've seen in recent memory as well. Mike McDaniel has a type. What can he say? It's very similar to what Al Davis liked, just a little bit more refined in his tastes, I would imagine. Tight end is a big sort of question mark. I think Durham Smythe fits a little bit more with what they're trying to do with that tight end role. I think Mike McDaniel likes blockers a lot more than having sort of receiving threats. If he can receive as well, like if you have a George Kittle in there, I think everyone's going to take a George Kittle because he can block so ferociously. But the very first job of the tight end in a Mike McDaniel style of offense is going to be blocking in all likelihood. And Durham Smythe does that a lot better than what Mike Gesicki brought to the table last year. So maybe as far as the offense is concerned, it works a little bit better. Yet to be seen if Durham Smythe can add that sort of receiving threat to his game. He's got some good target numbers in the past. Still never finished with over, I believe, like 400 yards in a season. His career high for touchdowns in a season is 2. So great sort of skill position players. Interested to see what happens with that tight end. Maybe they don't need production there, but maybe they will at some point. They just simply don't have it. I'm interested to see how that works. Still got Alec Ingold coming back at fullback there, same as last year. Really good. I don't know how they really use him, but seems to do well in this sort of offense there. So that's good. Teron Armstead, Liam Eichenberg, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, Austin Jackson on the offensive line. I believe all of those guys are returning from last season. I want to say Liam Eichenberg was on the team last year. Didn't show up in the free agency, so I'm only going to assume that. Still, Robert Hunt, Connor Williams, Teron Armstead, Austin Jackson, all guys that are solid. I think Austin Jackson is probably the one that you have the biggest question mark out of there, outside of like Liam Eichenberg. But got Isaiah Wynn for some backup help there. But really solid offensive line there as well. I don't think they got a whole lot of holes there on the offense. It's just a matter of, will Tua stay healthy? That's always the big question coming in. I've been on this show on the record saying I simply don't think he's going to be able to stay healthy because he sees red like a bull and runs his head into things he really shouldn't run his head into, and that's legitimately the head, the problem area in all of this. He just cannot stop getting concussions. So I don't see that necessarily abating. I wish he would just run out of bounds and act like a quarterback, because maybe he was a plus athlete at the college level. Certainly is not a plus athlete at the NFL level, so you just need to slide and run out of bounds, my good sir. You're not disrespecting the game. You're just making it so your team can still be competitive going forward, because when he is in this offense, it runs great. It runs smoothly. When he is healthy and does not have head injuries that cause him to see five people in one sort of person, what did I say there? You try to figure that out yourself. But when he's not seeing triple out there, this offense gets humming, man. That passing offense is one of the most efficient in the entire league. And when those receivers are getting hit down the field, it opens up some big gaping holes for the running backs to come downhill and get some yards as well. Hopefully Mike McDaniel mixes in a little bit more of the run game this year, just doesn't get quite so enamored with the passing game as he had a tendency to do at times last year. But just based on what's there, I don't see them being demonstrably different from what they were last year when Tua is in there and healthy. That's the big thing. He needs to stay healthy this year. What do we got going on the defensive side of the ball? Christian Wilkins, a guy that never gets talked about, but one of the best defensive tackles in the entire league. Great run stopper. Maybe not the biggest numbers in pass rush, but maybe the best run defender in the entire league right now. Raekwon Davis, Emmanuel Ogbah got in there as well. Jalen Phillips, pass rushing. David Long, who I just talked about. Jerome Baker at inside linebacker. Got Bradley Chubb on the other side of Jalen Phillips. Really solid front seven there, especially with Christian Wilkins anchoring things in the middle, making it very tough for any team to run the ball on. That is a blessing right there to have him there. And then if David Long can stay healthy behind him, you could have a really, really solid run defense there. And just adding in Vic Fangio, he will get this team playing. I'm telling you right now, they're going to be pushing for a top 10 defense. I've said it probably like 3 or 4 times already, but I'm pounding the table right now, really just an arm rest right now, and telling you they will be one of the better units in the entire league. Mark my words on that, and I'm more than willing to eat my words on that because it's funny. It's funny to be wrong sometimes, quite frankly, but that's even before you get to the secondary. Xavier Howard, Deshaun Elliott, Javon Holland, Jalen Ramsey. Deshaun Elliott's like one of those, like, you know, the meme of the dragon heads there. Everyone else is looking all scary, and then there's the derpy looking one. Deshaun Elliott's probably the derpy looking one here, but that. I mean, it kind of came out as an insult, but it really didn't mean to be an insult of Deshaun Elliott there. It's just that you got 3 legitimate sort of all-pro caliber players there. I mean, you got 2 all-pro caliber corners there with Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey. And you got a legitimate all-pro caliber safety, free safety at that, and Javon Holland. This team, the defense might actually have better personnel than the offense right now. They have a very, very good defense as far as the top-line personnel is concerned. Who they had in there last year, I forget the guy's name, did not work out so well, could not bring it all together and get them playing. Vic Fangio will get these guys playing on the defensive side of the ball, and all they need to do is give their offense just a glimmer of hope, just a little bit of wiggle room, and this could be a really, really good team. Like I said, 11 wins, maybe 11 wins if Tua can stay healthy. Could also see him going 9-8, 8-9, because the division is just simply that tough. And if Tua's not out there, it's not good. It's simply not good. If you don't have a quarterback, this team still could win a bunch of games even without a good quarterback, just because of how good the defense is probably going to be this year. But man, need Tua to stay healthy. I cannot stress that enough. You need Tua to stay healthy. Let's get into the bottom half of the division, shall we? We are almost getting to an hour here, and I was worried about it getting to an hour. We might be pushing an hour and a half in this one, folks. We are getting a nice, beefy, girthy episode for you. Let's move on, though, before I start using strange adjectives even more. But Patriots, they got rid of the Matt Patricia in the room, so by default, the offense is going to be better. Absolutely going to expect that they're going to be better. But plus, not only did you get rid of Matt Patricia, you bring in Bill O'Brien, who is actually a solid offensive coordinator. So I think Matt Jones is going to have a bounce back year this year. I mean, receivers aren't going to wow you. My goodness, I'm sorry about that. It exploded out of my face. I couldn't help it. But I digress there. What was I even talking about? That was just a bomb sneeze right there, man. Just dropped a bomb right on my face. But Bill O'Brien, he's in there. The receivers aren't that great. I think Mac Jones is going to have a good year, though. I mean, just because it's a bottom half of the league sort of receiver room doesn't mean they don't have Ramondre Stevenson, solid offensive line, beast at running back there, and Ramondre Stevenson in particular. Very smart quarterback in Mac Jones. Didn't like how he comported himself at times last year, but he was in a difficult situation, and I can't say I would have reacted any differently. I just probably would not have looked like a petulant child doing so. But that's McCorkle's problem. It's not mine. Very smart QB, though, Mac Jones, and that defense looks poised for their top 10 finish. I mean, like I was saying before, every single defense in this division looks, I don't know about loaded being the right term, but they look very, very good. I mean, probably better in all cases than what they looked like last year. That's simply not something you could say about any AFC West team last year. That's part of why I think this division is going to be as advertised this year. Not because the offenses are so spectacular, but because the defenses are just that awesome. And, they have the greatest football coach of all time. That'll help. That'll limit your losses, I would say. And with all that said, I think they have the worst roster in the division. There's not much you can really do about it, man. That's how good the division is. That's not a slight against them. That's just saying they're not as good on paper as the Jets. They're not as good on paper as the Dolphins. They're not as good on paper as the Bills. And there's a lot of teams in the league that are finishing probably second in their division that can also say that, man. It's just luck of the draw. And even saying that, I would be totally unperturbed if a different team just came in and finished last in the division than the Patriots, quite frankly. That's just how good Bill Belichick is. Even without the most talent in the division, he can still come out there and work magic because that's just what he's done time and time and time again throughout his entire career. Let's look at the roster itself, though. We have got, on the free agency front, they added, they lost Jacoby Myers in free agency, but can I interest you in a replacement of Juju Smith-Schuster? That's probably a downgrade if we're really being honest there, but they added him back in there. They re-signed, really extended Devontae Parker this just recently over the past week or so. Actually, I think that dropped. So hey, probably should add that in the headline section. Who cares? Whatever. He's a solid receiver. I do think adding Juju Smith-Schuster in there. Not sure that's maybe a replacement level of Jacoby Myers, maybe around the same thing you're getting, but we'll get to the depth chart in a second. It's still not. It's not really a bright and shiny receiver group, if you will. But getting ahead of myself now. They re-signed Jabril Peppers, re-signed Jonathan Jones, which we'll see. We'll see. He's in a tough legal spot right now. I'm pulling for you, bud. But I failed a different idiot test on that one. I digress on that. Signed Riley Reif at tackle. Signed the washboard abs himself, Chris Board. I don't know if that's true. He's a linebacker, though, in the modern NFL. He came over from the Detroit Lions, so I assume he's got something left in the tank. Calvin Anderson they signed from the Denver Broncos. And outside of that, they add Nelson Aguilar, re-signed Jalen Mills, James Robinson, who they already cut. Mike Gesicki, forgot about that one right there. Mike Gesicki coming in, playing more of that receiving tight end role, pairing with Hunter Henry. I think that's going to be a pretty good pickup there. They lose Damian Harris, so it's all Ramondre Stevenson this next season. He's going to be the feature back with no one to really share with unless Bill Belichick brings someone in, which who's to say? Maybe he ends up doing that. But that's pretty much does it for the for the big-time additions and free agency. Let's take a look at the draft this year, shall we? In the first round, they basically play mind games with everyone in the division, allow someone to jump them to go get a different player, I believe a tackle or something like that, just so the Jets couldn't get him. Controversy, that probably didn't happen, but they just sat back there. I think they had Christian Gonzalez as their number one cornerback on the board. They let Devon Witherspoon go. They let my boy, whose name escapes me, Emmanuel Forbes. I don't know why that couldn't come to my mind. He went before Christian Gonzalez, and they just sat there at 17, got him anyways. Really solid pickup there in the first round. That's the exact type of guy that Bill Belichick can maybe mold into being a star. That's the rich keep getting richer there. Also, by the way, what do you think the focus was this year? Their first 3 draft picks in the first 3 rounds, all on the defensive side of the ball. They get Keon White, defensive end out of Georgia Tech, who put up some big numbers last year. In the second round, he looked like a 72-year-old man who was not happy to be going to New England, but I think that might also be his face. I think he's going to be an absolute monster on that team. Also might be pissed that he went in the second round instead of the first round, because I think there was little chatter about him going in the first round. Keon White's going to come in. He's going to be pissed. He's going to be an absolute monster on that team in all likelihood, too. Again, the rich just keep getting richer. And they got, Bill Belichick always has to have one every season. It was Kyle Duggar one year. It was David Andrews not David Andrews. Cole Strange, actually, in the first round last year. This year, it was Marpe Mapu out of Sacramento State. Got to have those small school guys. I think the Patriots might have been the only team at Marpe Mapu's pro day. I might be totally slandering the good name of Marpe Mapu, but that's just the kind of... It pained Bill Belichick's soul to take 2 Power 5 guys in a row to start the draft. He had to come in strong with a small school guy. And then from there, he got an Eastern Michigan in there. He got a Troy. Also, by the way, Kayshon Boutte, remember him? He was... really like a first-round touted wide receiver, I think, coming into this year, and had such a bad year and such a god-awful combine that he slipped all the way to the 6th round. He went to the Patriots this year, and hey, maybe he can revive some of that promise that he showed at LSU in those first year or 2 while he was there. Who's to say? Maybe it happens. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. I could say who's to say again, but you get it. I guess they draft Jake Andrews in the 6th or in the 4th round. Outside of that, though, there's not really a whole lot of guys you've heard of. They got a guy named Antonio Mafi. That's pretty cool. They got a Mafa. Mafa was a guy drafted by the Seahawks last year. They got a Mapu and a Mafi. That's a fun last name sort of pairing there for you, but that's it with the additions. So let's look at how this whole thing comes together. We're looking at the depth chart. Obviously, Mac Jones, Ramondre Stevenson at the quarterback and running back, respectively. Having Bill O'Brien, butt chin Bill in there with that magnificent cleft chin that he's got, that is huge for Mac Jones, especially with having the weapons that he has. I am totally at a loss for words today, but Juju at the number 1, Devontae Parker at the number 2, Tyquan Thornton at the number 3 right now, according to ESPN. And of course, you got Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte, who I just said. Maybe Kayshon Boutte can move up the ranks. I don't know. He was a 6th round pick, so you're not expecting much out of him. Kendrick Bourne, though, is a guy that I really like his explosivity. I don't know what his route tree looks like, but I love having a true offensive coordinator in there, and the prospect of him being used in creative ways, because he's an explosive athlete. He's a big play waiting to happen a lot of these times. He just has some concentration issues, maybe not the most well-versed route tree of all time, not necessarily someone that you want to pin the entire offense on, but a very good gadget guy there. I think they got a bunch of guys that have some good tools. Like Juju is okay sort of possession receiver. Devontae Parker, same sort of thing. Tyquan Thornton can stretch the field. Kendrick Bourne can do some good things for you. Got a little spark plug in there every once in a while that you can kind of use in creative ways. Also got Mike Gesicki running out, getting passes this year. Hunter Henry's, doing a little bit more of the dirty work, inline blocking to let Mike Gesicki go out there and flourish in his best role, his most suited role. It's not a bad group of receivers. I do still think it's a bottom half of the league group of receivers, though. That's just how many receivers are in the league right now. But with Bill O'Brien running the offense like he once did with the Patriots, I think it's something that you can really, you're cooking with gas if you got a good offensive coordinator, a good running back, and those weapons. And they also got, bringing back Trent Brown on the offensive side, on the offensive left tackle at that blindside tackle. Cole Strange, who they drafted last year, stepping in there at that starting guard. David Andrews, Michael Nwenu, Riley Reif, who they just signed in free agency at right tackle, which that might be the one that I'm most concerned about, because Riley Reif at this stage in his career, I'm not sure you necessarily want him as your starting tackle. And that's, kind of an insult to Riley Reif, but did he not start at guard for someone last year? Maybe I'm misremembering right now, but I feel like Riley Reif was starting at guard for someone, which, by the way, if you're a tackle and you move to a guard position for a whole season, that's a pretty good indicator that it's just about almost over. And yeah, Patriots have pulled off some miracles in the past, but I don't know. Trent Brown's good at left tackle, but Riley Reif at right, color me skeptical, if you will. That's a yellow color, I believe. I don't know. I was going to say who's to say again, but I caught myself and then said it again in my explanation. So, fuck me, but whatever. Let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. That's the real sort of meat of this team right here. It's what the team is going to be built around, as Bill Belichick would have it. He wouldn't have it any other way than what it is right here. Lawrence Guy at the left defensive end, Dietrich Wise, right defensive end, Devon Godchaux as the nose tackle. Same guys they had in there last year. Same sort of front three. And that's not really, they're not going to get you a whole lot of headlines, but they're doing some very good dirty work in the middle, limiting run reps. Very good just group of guys up there. I'd love to see it. Outside of that, though, you got Matthew Judon, explosive last couple years rushing the passer over there. Jelani Tavai in the middle. Josh Uche in the middle as well. Two ascending players, young guys in there. Outside of that, you've also got Jonathan Jones in the secondary, which, pending legal matters, so I think he'll probably play until the legal decision comes down, but who's to say if he sticks around all the time? We'll have to wait and see on that one. Got Kyle Duggar at strong safety, Jabril Peppers at free safety, Christian Gonzalez likely stepping in there to start opposite of Jonathan Jones if he's still on the team by that point. I feel like he probably would have been cut if the decision was going to be made. Also, again, pending legal matter. Pulling for you, John. Pulling for you, John. There's a lot there, but if it all comes to fruition, not a bad little secondary as well. Kyle Duggar really coming on strong over the last couple of years, man. You got Jalen Mills as a backup right now, and Adrian Phillips as a backup as well. And the guy you just drafted, Marpe Mapu, back there. They have a really, really deep safety room right there. So even if Jonathan Jones does go out and you got to start Marcus Jones in there, by the way, not a bad little consolation. Marcus Jones isn't a bad corner. Maybe not what Jonathan Jones is, but not a bad corner at all. Even if you're starting him in there, though, you're starting a rookie cornerback on the other side in all likelihood, you're still going to have a very deep group of safeties that are going to cover up some things in the back end, make life a little bit easier. And you've got maybe the greatest defensive mind of the past generation, maybe all time if you're just talking straight up defensive minds. So I really enjoy this team. I think they set out, last year to go out and get younger, get faster. They absolutely did that, and they benefited accordingly. And they're coming back just as good this upcoming year. They could really cement themselves in the top 10 I don't know about very easily, but very early in this season if they play their cards right. That's just how good this defense is right now. And it could drag them to a bunch of wins this year. It could be some weird sort of wins that they get out of there, like Buffalo in the win last time whenever that happened. Just weird stuff. Bill Belichick wins weird games. You can guarantee that. You can put that on a stamp right now. I'm just thinking right off the top of my head, they had that win game in Buffalo where they won like 3-0 or something like that. And they had the what the hell are you doing game with the Raiders where they start the pitchy woo-woo play. Jacoby Myers tosses it all the way back across the field. Mac Jones gets stiff-armed through the crust of the earth, and Chandler Jones is off to the races when they really could have just ran out of bounds and just taken it to overtime. Could the Patriots actually, come to think of it, they didn't win that game. What am I talking about? I just totally kneecapped my entire point there, but it was a fun memory lane to go down. That was a wild chain of events there, but I'm already talking in circles too much. We're over an hour. We got to get this thing going, buddy. Outside of that, though, with all of that said, bringing it all together for this little pie, the Patriots strike me as a 10-win team. I think 10-7 is the number. I think they're better than they were last year. I don't really see them getting to 11, but I also can't really see them being below 500. Like 9-8, 10-7. They have the shortest bandwidth of any team this year. Very low sort of variability I see in them. I cannot for the life of me see them being an under 500 team with what they've got in place this year. I think they're good enough to very much do that. Also don't see them having a very high ceiling either. They're just going to be consistent. They're going to cause you a lot of troubles. Maybe they will be competitive. Maybe they'll challenge for a playoff spot. Still, even with that, probably last place in this division. It's going to be hard to get better than last place in this division if with this Patriots roster. If anyone can do it, it's Bill Belichick, but that's just how loaded this division is. And let's talk about a team that maybe improved more than anyone else in the division this past offseason. It's the New York Jets. And before I get into the Jets, I'm going to take a quick sip because I have been talking for entirely too long. Let's get the gas out of there. Whew. All right. It's all settling down now. So we are right back into this thing, rounding out the AFC East with the New York Jets. I think the Aaron Rodgers effect is going to be immense here. I think I hesitate because this happened once before with Brett. I mean, it is the exact carbon copy of the situation with Brett Favre coming in. They're like talking Super Bowl, they're talking playoffs, they're talking all that sort of things. And what do? They go 8-8. Brett Favre has a messed up elbow. He throws like 27 interceptions. Obviously, very different players are Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Brett Favre could go out there and throw you 20 interceptions in a given year, and you'd be like, oh, okay, well that's just Brett. If Aaron Rodgers does that, you're like, oh man, he's cooked. He is done because the only way he's throwing 20 interceptions in a season is if he physically cannot get the ball out there anymore. If he's just throwing med balls like Peyton Manning and Phillip Rivers were at the end of their careers. That's the only way in which he gets that many turnovers. Otherwise, he's an efficient quarterback in a team that truly just needed a above average quarterback to get to the next level. And they got a top 10 sort of borderline pushing top 5 sort of quarterback with Aaron Rodgers still at 39 years of age. I mean, the offensive tackle situation, it scares me that having Mekhi Becton be your linchpin, that's a recipe for disaster right there, especially he's never really I can't remember if he's actually played an NFL game before. He's just been injured non-stop since coming into the league, and I hope it changes because he's, big specimen of a guy out there. But man, I'm just going off the history. Doesn't feel very likely, but that's all to say. Offensive tackle situation scares me. Every other aspect of this team, though, is ready to win a playoff game. They're ready to go to the playoffs, possibly make a championship run sort of caliber team here. They are absolutely loaded everywhere. Very good interior offensive line, incredibly deep receiving core, including solid tight ends. Still very intrigued. I know he's a 7th round pick, but the measurables are just so tantalizing. 6'8", destroyed everyone at the combine and everything. Got right up there, I believe, in the top 3 of bench press reps. Sort of a later round caliber guy, so he had to do all the drills, but he was top 3 at the very worst in every single category of drills at the combine. Be it speed, quickness, explosivity. He is just a freak athlete. Zach Kuntz, I'm very excited to see if he ends up getting on the field. I feel like if he does get on the field, it might be like a Jimmy Graham sort of situation where oh wait, hold on, we can do something with that. Just go out there and jump. Just jump high. I'm going to throw it up where literally only you can get it. You 6'8", giant, fast motherfucker. I mean, just a physical specimen out there. So, 7th round pick, but I feel like he's going to get some reps in there. You got Breece Hall coming off an ACL injury, but it is a deep backfield outside of him, and if he comes back at full speed, a legitimate home run hitter you got there in the backfield. And that's just before I even mention the true strength of this team, which is the defense. They have stars at every single level of the defense. All-pro defensive tackle in Quinnen Williams. All-pro linebacker in C.J. Mosley, who can be a brain in that defense, call things out when he sees them. a legitimate top 5 corner on a rookie deal in Sauce Gardner, and a solid safety tandem with Adrian Amos and Jordan Whitehead right now. There's a reason I picked them to go to the AFC Championship in my early season predictions. I mean, not early season, like way too early predictions is what I was going for there. If the offensive tackles don't fall apart, this could be a very good team. But let's look at what their offseason entails, starting off with the players they add. I mean, they added basically every player that passed through the Green Bay Packers that Aaron Rodgers was like, you know what? That guy's all right. I could do some ayahuasca tea with that guy. He's a good dude. Basically, anyone who fit that description, the Jets just signed him this offseason. Allen Lazard, 4-year deal. He'll feature prominently in that receiving core. Also, they add in, goodness, who am I looking for here? Randall Cobb. They add in Adrian Amos here late. Just all sorts of guys that were either on the wish list or on his teams in previous years. Outside of that, though, they add. Actually, no, they lose Nathan Shepard, who I've definitely heard of. That's a guy I've definitely heard of. But also lose Sheldon Rankins in the middle there. They do still have Quentin Williams, but that's some lost depth there if nothing else. Lose guard Nate Herbig, which watch out in the middle of that defense. Once again, worried about that. Lose Mike White. Add in McCole Hardman. Outside of that, though, mostly the same from what they were last year. I mean, add in Quentin Jefferson, could work. Lose Braxton Berrios. Kind of a mixed bag there in free agency. Resign Greg Zuerlein. I mean, hey, also got Al Woods replacing some of that depth. Having Greg the Leg on the team, that beautiful son of a bitch there, kicking balls straight to the sky when he kicks them straight, it's beautiful. Keeping Connor McGovern on the team for a 1-year deal. That's the McGovern I was thinking about at center. The McGoverns, man, one of them needs to change their name or like put a 1 at the end of their name or something like that, like just to make their username unique in real life. I hate that I just use that terminology, but it's confusing to have 2 McGoverns that are both offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen at that, in the league at the same time. I am firmly under protest for this one. Oh, also, they re-signed Solomon Thomas, who very solid, never lived up to that number 2 overall potential. That was kind of an unfair sort of expectation to set on him, though. Just ends up being a solid defensive player. I mean, not someone you're going to write home about, but a solid defensive player Solomon Thomas has turned into. Outside of the free agency, though, who they drafted this year, got Will McDonald in the first round. Beautiful family, that Will McDonald out of Iowa. Joe Tipman in the second round, very beginning of the second round, center out of Wisconsin, bolstering up that interior like I was just talking about. Carter Warren, offensive tackle out of Pittsburgh in the 4th round, and then a bunch of guys I haven't heard of, except for Zach Kuntz in the 7th round. Again, I just have a good feeling. I got a good feeling about Zach Kuntz in the 7th round. Just feels like a guy that could explode with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback, but who's to say? With all that put together, though, the final depth chart we're looking at here, the New York Jets, is as followed. On the offense, we got Aaron Rodgers coming in, being the real difference maker on that offense. Also, forgot that they added Nathaniel Hackett this offseason, man. That's totally something that had nothing to do with the Aaron Rodgers deal at all. That's just something they just wanted to hire him. He's a very good offensive coordinator, and there was no ulterior motives whatsoever to hire Nathaniel Hackett to be the offensive coordinator. With all that said, him and Aaron Rodgers, very good at built-in chemistry. He's probably... Excuse me. Aaron Rodgers was probably teaching guys that were already on the team that Nathaniel Hackett offense this offseason. They're going to be coming out of the gates probably hot, if I had to imagine, just based on that built-in chemistry between quarterback and offensive coordinator. Also, by the way, an offensive coordinator who, after the showing he had last year in like half a year with the Denver Broncos, I'm not sure there's a really big head coaching market out there for him. And I think the Denver Broncos kind of hired him in the first place because maybe, just possibly, they could entice Aaron Rodgers to come over there. That didn't work out for them. Worked out for the Jets this past offseason, though. All that is to say, outside of and it's disrespectful to Nathaniel Hackett, I'll be the first one to admit it, but outside of just being an Aaron Rodgers wag of the buttocks, if you will, as my British friends like to say, towards him to say, come on over, not a guy that you're really looking to bring in as a head coach at this stage in his career. So good offensive stability going forward. I can almost guarantee you of that. Breece Hall at the running back, if and when he comes back. Not if, when he comes back. That'll be good. Also got Michael Carter behind him and Zonovan Knight in there. Israel Abanaconda. That's the guy back there who's currently the third string running back, whom I've legitimately never heard of. But, like I was saying, deep backfield, just because I never heard of him doesn't mean he can't be a baller back there. And the wide receiver core, man, I'll tell you what. Garrett Wilson, McCole Hardman at the third spot. Alan Lazard at the second spot. And you also got Corey Davis. Randall Cobb, who's going to probably feature prominently on third down. That's a legit, like, 5-deep sort of wide receiver core right there. And that's before you even get to a solid tight end room with Tyler Conklin, very good inline blocker, solid receiver when you ask him to be. CJ Uzama, same sort of build there as well. They just got a really good group of receivers, man. And Garrett Wilson, I cannot understate, Garrett Wilson might be a top 5 receiver with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. I'm not going to guarantee anything, but he came on strong at the end of last year, and that was with either a good little combination of White Mike and Zach Wilson throwing him the ball. Aaron Rodgers is going to be a different beast entirely. He could have some Looney Tunes numbers this year. Just go back and look at what the first year of, well, not the first year, but the first year of great production was like with Devontae Adams, with Aaron Rodgers in there. You could see some very similar numbers this season with Garrett Wilson, depending on how they build that chemistry going into the year. He's a freak. He's an athletic freak. There's a reason he was drafted top 10 last year, and he showed that in spades down the stretch last season. He's going to have a monstrous second year. I'm not going to guarantee anything, but he is going to explode off the film next season. You can almost guarantee that. Outside of that, we have got Dwayne Brown at left tackle, Mekhi Becton at right tackle again. You got a 40-year-old and a guy who simply cannot stay on the field anchoring your offensive line. Not the best situation to walk into in the world, but got Laken Tomlinson in the middle, who's played very well since coming over to the Jets. Connor McGovern, very solid center. Elijah Vera Tucker, who has really played well since being drafted by the team whenever he was drafted a couple years back. So the interior is really good. I think you're going to be able to run the ball very well. Might be playing some quick game, depending on how the health situation of the offensive tackles goes. I'll go with that. I mean, if Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton could stay out there, that's good. That's a really good set of tackles right there. But history would suggest otherwise. Just putting it out there. But overall, offense looking really, really good this year. I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. They were truly a quarterback away. Well, a quarterback and maybe a deep tackle room away. Oh, by the way, I think they signed Billy Turner as well, another former Packer that just, Aaron Rodgers said, I like that guy. I smoked weed with him. I did ayahuasca. I microdosed mushrooms with that guy. He's a good dude. Let's bring him on the team. And the Jets were like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Why not? So, yeah, just another former Packer coming on to the Jets this offseason. What else is new? The pseudo GM, the phantom GM, Aaron Rodgers out there doing Joe Douglas's job. Maybe he'll draft a quarterback better based on his history with Green Bay. Probably will never draft a quarterback ever, but I digress on that front. That's what the offense is looking like right there. Very, very solid if Aaron Rodgers plays up to really even like 80% of what he's been his entire career. They could be pushing a top 10 offense this year very, very easily. On defense, some new fresh faces on the defensive line, specifically John Franklin Myers. I think he was there last year, but I think he's stepping into the starting role, which he wasn't in last year. Still got Quentin Jefferson and Quinnen Williams there in the middle as well. You added Al Woods, retained Solomon Thomas. So just a deep interior defensive line there. Nothing to see here. Just an all-pro defensive tackle and a couple solid role players beside him. You love to see it. Carl Lawson at defensive end. Jamie Sherwood, who I'd never heard of, but maybe he'll do well. C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams, though, the other two linebackers, very, very solid front seven on the whole. C.J. Mosley's going to put them all in the right place. Quincy Williams has played very, very well. Maybe he's got some chemistry with his brother. That would make a whole lot of sense, being that they've grown up with each other. But again, if you didn't know, Quincy and Quinnen Williams are brothers, so there you go, family connection there. Playing off each other, linebacker brother, playing off the all-pro defensive tackle brother. beautiful things to watch. I mean, just beautiful synchronicity. Not quite as beautiful as Robin and Brooke Lopez being on the same NBA team again, but just beautiful synchronicity. Brothers playing together, playing sports. What else could you love more about sports in general than just that picture right there in the pro sports sphere? I don't know what I'm talking about there, but solid defensive front. Maybe not some big names up there, but they have been very, very good. And their job is made easier by this secondary. I mean, DJ Reed on one side gets overshadowed by Sauce Gardner on the other side, but DJ Reed is still a very, very good corner, and he's getting absolutely targeted up a storm with Sauce Gardner on the other side. I'll tell you that right now, because teams are going to start staying away from Sauce. Sauce Island is here to stay for the foreseeable future, so DJ Reed's probably going to get a lot of work once again, and I think he's going to be up to the challenge. And, of course, you got Adrian Amos, Jordan Whitehead at the safeties there as well. This defense, for how good the offense is and for what they've added this offseason, the defense is still king on this team. I think they are a potential top 5 unit this year. They were that good last year. They were absolutely incredible at times last year. Excuse me, that was disgusting. But they just, down the stretch, it's hard to play great defense if your offense is giving you literally nothing. And outside of Garrett Wilson, that's pretty much what the offense was doing. Literally nothing, because Breece Hall went out early. They had White Mike and the boys playing quarterback for him. Just was not a good scene for him on offense. You had a real offense to that could maybe control the clock a little bit as well as push the ball down the field. You got a defense that is ready to break out even more this coming season. I could very easily see this being a top 5 defense this coming year. Also, by the way, you got McCole Hardman back returning kicks. That could be interesting depending on what they do with the fair catches out there. But really, really solid team overall, man. If the offensive tackles don't fall apart, I have no reason to think this team can't get 12 or 13 games won this season. They are just that good. That being said, if Becton gets hurt again and Dwayne Brown turns out to have nothing left in the tank, I mean, he's damn near 40 at this point, so it's entirely possible. I just have a hard time seeing this offense generate big plays, which will hurt. I still think having Aaron Rodgers in there will make them better than what they were last year, but it'll hurt their chances of winning the division, especially with how tough that division is going to be. I'd say 9 or 10 wins in that worst-case scenario, still the floor if that happens and Rodgers stays healthy. God forbid if Rodgers gets hurt, which is really true of every starting quarterback in this division right now, so it's kind of a cheat code to say that, but if Rodgers gets hurt, though, they will be the exact same team as last year. Under 500, not a pulse on offense and a defense that's just asking, please help me at all times. That's the one, I can tell you right now, that defense is going to be probably spectacular no matter what. So tune in for the defense. Get your popcorn ready for the offense. It might be a fun time, might be a less than fun time. We'll just have to see how it goes. Jets and the Dolphins are my 2 biggest performance wild cards in the division in the AFC East, and it truly comes down to the health of both of those quarterbacks. And if I had to pick a winner for this division, kind of summing it all up as we get down here towards the end of this episode, I think I'm probably picking the Bills again, honestly. I kind of went back and forth on this. I think ultimately, come the playoffs, the Jets will probably be playing better football. There's probably going to be some growing pains in the early season, though. I feel like the Jets are going to drop some here and there. I mean, they start off the season with, the Chiefs, I want to say. So it's not, maybe they don't start off they start off their home opener with the Chiefs. I think that's in week 2. So not an easy stretch to start out with. They got a very hard division as well, and probably you're incorporating a new quarterback in their new offensive system. You're going to have some kinks here and there that kind of limit effectiveness early. They're going to get it going down the stretch, though, and I think ultimately, still sticking by my prediction that they might make I'm predicting them to make the AFC Championship here in, July. So that, for whatever that means, take that for what it is. But as of right now, I still think the Bills, on a full year sort of sample size, they're going to end up having a better record, probably winning this division, maybe pushing for a bye in that number 1 slot going into next season. So yeah, that's my pick. The Bills for the regular season, Jets for the postseason. AFC East is going to be must-watch television, though, and with that, good little time here, a little hour and a half sort of episode. We're getting right back into the thick of analyzing football. Next week we'll be doing the NFC East. look forward to that. Should be a good time. So, with that, thank you so much for tuning in to Unqualified Analysis. Man, we've had a good time today, haven't we? We had a good time. Well, hey, if you did have a good time and you've listened all the way to this point, why not hit subscribe? Why not share? Because you know what? You're one of the rare few that make it all the way to this point. I'll tell you that right now. People don't listen all the way to the end of hour and a half long podcast, man. I'll tell you what. So pat yourself on the back. Yeah, you do that. You did a great job today. You could do an even better job if you rate 5 stars, if you like it, if you share the show, if you follow me on Twitter, if you follow everywhere this podcast is put out there. Hey, follow the YouTube channel because we're trying to grow that a little bit more. It's been some good numbers over there compared to what we're getting on the podcast side of things. So yeah, subscribe to that. Get that thing growing a little bit more. And you know what? Got an episode once a week here in the off season. We are really getting into the dog days of the off season, the deadest time of the NFL calendar. So division previews are ramping up, the headlines are ramping down, and we're getting closer and closer to the season, man. We just got to get through this summer, and then we're right there back into the best time of the year. Fall is undefeated, ladies and gentlemen. Your team might be 5-11, but the fall is 17-0, my guy. It is good games every single week, even when it's shitty games that week. It's just, football season is beautiful, people. Football season is beautiful. If you want to contact the show, probably just shoot me a DM on Twitter at Caleb Verzak. That's how my name is spelled. Link will be down in the description if you want to get up on that. Or you can shoot me an email at unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. That's unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. And with that said, one thing I learned last week, Johnny Cash was the first American to know that Stalin had died whenever he died back in the 50s. And that's kind of maybe true, might be bullshit, but it's plausible enough to where I'm taking it. I'm going to call it a fact right now. And if you're wondering, really, Johnny Cash, the guy that sung all those folk songs, one of the great singers of our time, yeah, that Johnny Cash was reportedly the first one to hear that Stalin had died. He was listening into, I believe, an encrypted Soviet. He was eavesdropping on the Soviets, pretty much, doing some counter intel over in, I believe it was West Germany. He was stationed at the time in the army, listening in on coded transmissions. I don't know if he actually knew what he was hearing, but he decoded the transmission, and it said Stalin was dead. He was in that division. Who's to say if he was actually the first one? But saying Johnny Cash was the first one to hear that Joseph Stalin had died, pretty cool fact. So I'm just rolling with it. And with that, don't let facts get in the way of the good story. Y'all have a good one. I'll see you next week.